What abruptly shattered every illusion you held about yourself? A few days ago, my old roommate forwarded me a link to an indie webcomic with absolutely no explanation. Just a vague text reading, "Check out chapter 12. Believe me." I assumed he stumbled upon a gritty sci-fi series with an art style he knew I would appreciate. I tapped the link on my tablet while waiting for my laundry to finish, completely relaxed and oblivious to what was coming. The landing page was visually striking. The comic was titled Dead End Detour. It followed a cynical protagonist forced to navigate a cross-country road trip alongside a hopelessly incompetent sidekick. Simple premise. The protagonist monologues internally while the sidekick causes endless disasters. The comment section was the most active part, filled with readers roasting the sidekick's sheer stupidity. Lots of keyboard smashing, lots of "how is this guy even alive" energy. It was undeniably engaging. I was genuinely hooked. Chapter 12 was called The Map Incident. I smirked at the title, swiped to the first panel, and kept reading. A few scrolls down, the atmosphere shifted. The protagonist was driving a beat-up silver sedan with a dented left fender. I drove a silver sedan with that exact dent. Then the sidekick attempted to fold a massive paper map, got frustrated by the wind, and accidentally dropped the entire thing out the passenger window onto the highway. My chest tightened. I put the tablet down on the coffee table. I had taken a chaotic road trip down the coast 5 years ago with a guy I barely knew from a summer warehousing job, and I had dropped our only map out the window on the freeway. I picked the tablet back up, my hands suddenly clammy. The next scene showed the sidekick trying to fix a flat tire by wedging a large river rock under the axle instead of using a jack. I tried that exact maneuver because my jack was rusted shut. The protagonist in the comic just stood there on the gravel shoulder, smoking a cigarette in the rain, watching the sidekick fail miserably. I remembered that rainstorm. I remembered him smoking. We had traveled together for 2 grueling weeks. When we finally parted ways, I honestly thought we were fine. We shook hands, agreed it was a wild ride, and went our separate ways. I looked back on that trip as a character-building adventure. I genuinely believed we survived a tough journey as equals. According to chapter 12, I was a walking disaster who nearly got us killed, and he wasn't entirely wrong. The comic depicted a scene at a remote campsite where a wild animal approached our tent in the dead of night. The sidekick shrieks, sprints to the car, and locks the doors, leaving the protagonist trapped outside. That happened, but it was a massive, terrifying raccoon, and I panicked. I told myself my survival instincts just kicked in. He drew it as a tiny, harmless squirrel. The author's notes at the bottom of the page called the sidekick a deeply concerning liability who lacked basic human empathy. The readers wholeheartedly agreed. My old roommate, the one who sent me the link, had heard the raccoon story from my perspective years ago. He found this comic, recognized the specific details, confirmed his suspicions, and quietly waited for the perfect moment to ruin my afternoon. I want to be furious, but I have to respect the absolute dedication to the bit. I finished the chapter sitting in a cold sweat, but mostly trying to rationalize it. One unflattering caricature in a niche webcomic that a few thousand people read. It was ancient history. I could survive this minor blow to my ego. Then I made the catastrophic mistake of clicking the author's main profile. It wasn't just a webcomic, it was a massive franchise. There were 60 chapters. I was the main antagonist for the first 40. I went from being a mildly annoying travel companion to a fully fleshed out villain with a tragic backstory he entirely fabricated. Readers had formed dedicated forums analyzing my incompetence. Strangers on the internet were actively rooting for the protagonist to abandon me at a gas station. I scrolled through the community tab. Someone had knitted a plush toy of my character looking terrified. Another person wrote a long essay about how I represented the burden of toxic positivity. But that wasn't even the worst part. Pinned to the top of the page was a massive announcement. The comic had been picked up by an indie animation studio. They were running a crowdfunding campaign for the pilot episode, and it had raised an unbelievable amount of cash. In the latest video, the creator thanked the fans and mentioned that the studio lawyers required him to get a signed likeness waiver from the real-life inspiration behind the sidekick before production could officially begin. He looked directly into the camera and asked the internet to help him track down the guy he drove to the coast with 5 years ago. They even had a hashtag trending for it. They call me the liability.